Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. This is the session on Photovoice, and I'm Greg Kaminski with Online Learning. And my teaching areas are ESOL, Focus, and Reading as well. And we have Stacie Williams with us today.
Hi, I'm Stacie Williams, and I teach in Communication Studies.
All right. So we're going to move forward to just give you some background about Photovoice, about what this is, and then we have a project for you as well. So a lot of the session today will be interactive, working on a special project that will be using a picture that you have taken or will be taking, and we'll be putting it into Google Slides. So Stacie's going to start us off with some information about Photovoice.
Yeah, so Photovoice is actually the name of a qualitative research methodology, and that was developed in the mid-90s, and it's a part of participatory action research. And so what it does is it empowers people to be part of the research process and really drive common themes and share perspective and experience. And it's a way to empower and include folks instead of sort of treating the researcher as somebody outside of the community who's looking in on the community. And Photovoice as a methodology draws a lot on feminist theory and critical pedagogy, which is why I have the quote in the blue box on the left here, thinking about empowerment education and how what it does is it allows the person who is sharing images and ultimately who's taking those images to frame and to share their perspective and their experiences. So what we are talking about today takes its roots from Photovoice, but we're looking at a modified version. We're obviously not thinking about it as a research methodology and then going through all the components that would be associated with that. Instead, the piece that we're taking and modifying from this is giving our students and us, even as instructors, we're part of the learning community with our students, the opportunity to share our perspective literally in the form of images. And those can be curated around specific themes that might relate to your course content. And we're going to talk more about that today after we've had the opportunity to practice some Photovoice. So one of the great things, again, is that it empowers people to share their perspective. We will be talking a little bit later today about some of the ethical considerations to consider around taking images, especially if they might include other folks, as well as sharing those in the classroom. So we will come back to some of that.
Okay, and in terms of applying this to education, so it's a great tool to use with students, with classes. The images can be a tool to empower student voices, as Stacie mentioned then. We all have our discussion boards, text discussion boards, and those are terrific and really let students delve into topics in great detail. But it's very helpful to have the opportunity to add images to help really carry the message with those text discussions as well. The students' images to tell their story or to interact with the content. And it can just make it much more engaging. As an ESOL instructor, I might have a focus on present progressive tense for the week, for example, and I could ask students to take a walk in your area, take pictures showing activities that people are doing during this time of social distancing. So making it something real, authentic for them, and then come back and post and describe the activities that those people are doing. So these images can be a powerful tool for communicating, sharing experiences, identifying commonalities between the students. And if you're interested in more in the Photovoice research, Amanda Latz has written a book recently. So Amanda is a professor of education at Ball State University, and she wrote the book Photovoice Research in Education and Beyond in 2017. And we'll find that later in the references slide right at the end of the presentation today.
So I think the really exciting thing about using a modified version of Photovoice is that it, like Greg had mentioned, gives us the opportunity to express things that words could not alone. And it allows us to create connection in ways that reading words on a page just don't have us connect. And I think through our exercise today, you'll experience some of that. In my class, I have an optional discussion forum giving the opportunity for folks who are wanting to share just about how life is going right now, but not necessarily related to content, We're sharing little photos or snippets of music and stuff like that in the discussion forum. So when the quarter started, I had PDFs provided by the publisher of a couple of chapters, and the student sent me a picture of him working at his computer with that and said, "Oh, I'm really excited for my book to arrive because this PDF is just not as exciting as turning a page." And I was able to take out my cell phone and then respond with a picture I snapped really quickly of my textbook open next to my computer saying, "Hey, I hear you. That's, having the ability to turn pages is important to me." And so we've gone on in the course having lots of short exchanges, sharing images. People are sending me photos or posting photos of flowers that are blooming in their garden, talking about how it's an opportunity to start feeling hopeful that things are coming alive. And so it's this way where we're creating these connections to sort of see the things that other people are experiencing and connect in the humanity of that. So whether it's something informal, like the examples I've given, or tied into a specific lesson and content area like Greg was talking about for ESOL, there's a lot of opportunity for this to be a way to connect in a way that we know words don't do that alone. So that's why we're going to take some opportunity to try it out for ourselves, because I don't know that there's a lot more we could tell you without you actually experiencing it, because Photovoice is such an experiential type of activity.
So here's an example. So I sent out the prompt. The prompt is to take a picture of a view from or near your home office, something that you find rejuvenating, a place of solitude that refreshes your energy level. And today you'll have a chance to post that picture and tell us a little bit about it as I have listed here. And here's the prompt or actually the activity. So to take a photo, which you already know, related to the discussion prompt, and then email that photo to yourself so you can insert it into the slideshow. Now, Stacie's going to demonstrate this next, but later on you're going to find the slide below with your name on it. We'll give you access to these slides, and that's going to be your slide to work on. But you're going to insert your photo on the right side of the slide, resize it if you'd like, and add some text on the left side related to the question. Then at the end, after you're finished with your slide, you're going to peruse the other slides and add a comment to at least a couple of other slides. So Stacie's going to demonstrate, and I'm going to get out of presentation mode here.
So I'm going to start by inserting my image, and I took it with my cell phone this morning and then just emailed it to myself. It's on my desktop. So I'm going to just hit insert image, upload from computer, and it's on my desktop. This is the image. I also pre-wrote some text, so y'all don't have to watch me type and make a ton of spelling mistakes as I'm publicly typing. And so you would normally just type some text into this text box. And so these are just a couple of notes about the space and the image that I have, which also captured my dog Rooney. And so it's that simple. You'll have a slide with your name on it. You can enter some text, insert your image, and just as a quick refresher, to insert an image, you can hit insert and then image. You also can click on the slide and this little insert image button appears too. So there's a couple different ways. And maybe Greg, you want to demonstrate a comment?
Oh, yeah. So there's a little, kind of looks like a flag to comment icon with a plus sign right in the middle of it. I'm just going to click on that. It says add comment, and so I can place that comment right there. So I'm going to go to the next slide, which is a repeat of the activity actually. And when I send this out to you, you'll also see a link on there to the Google Slide help that I sent through the email if you need help with any part of the process. And you can also type questions in the chat, and we'll be able to help you with that. So there's the prompt, and once again, taking the picture and posting it, and then tell us something about what is special about this place. Right, as Stacie just mentioned, you can do it on your cell phone as well with the Google Slides app. So I'm going to give all of you in the chat access to this slideshow. I've just typed it in the chat. So go to the chat and just click on that link, And if for some reason it's not showing up for you, it's probably behind Zoom. You might have to escape from full screen of Zoom, which you can do just by pressing the escape key on your computer. That'll take you out of the full screen. But let us know if you have trouble with that. Navigate to your slide. They're all labeled by name. If you don't see your name on any slide, go to the end of the slide deck and just choose a blank one, and you can insert your name in the blank one. There are a couple of instances where we have duplicate names, in which case I've used your last name as well. Feel free to change your name, modify your name, whatever you prefer as your name to use on your slide. All right, and I'm going to start perusing a bit and see what pictures, what folks are adding here. That looks like a great place for yoga, Anne. I'm going to see a lot of pet pictures today. Okay, a fountain. I love the sound of water in the background. All right, some beautiful.
Can I ask a question, Greg and Stacie?
Yes, yes. Go ahead, Chris.
Do you generally do it all live like this? So you have all the students working on it live, or do you have them prepare slides in advance and then compile?
Great question, Chris. So you don't have to do it live. In fact, you can do it synchronously like this. If you have a class period of an hour or so and you'd like to make use of a very interactive activity, it can be quite engaging. You can also turn it into an asynchronous activity and spend a few days or spend a week on it, potentially.
Okay.
Your choice. So for sharing the slides, also in the Google, I'm going to go again back to the Google Slides Basics document. So the last item I added on page 2 of that document, it's all right there. So how to add a link from D2L to your Google Slides Photovoice activity. And you want to make sure that you share it with everyone at PCC can edit, so your students can edit that document. And then there are a couple of ways you can add it as explained in the document there, by linking it directly to a content page or linking it to an announcement. You can put it in many different places.
Okay, great.
Can you only do it through D2L?
Yeah, so you can make this available through D2L, so right through D2L.
Only D2L, or?
You could share the link to those slides in the chat if you were having a remote session with your students live like we're doing today. You could just share it in the chat like Greg did. You could email it to your students. You could post the link in D2L. If you're using Google Slides, there's a lot of options. Okay. If you are teaching online or in an asynchronous format, there's also ways that you could do a similar activity using the discussion forum in D2L.
Would you sometimes have them do more than one slide? More than one prompt?
You definitely could. I would say however works for the assignment that you have. Maybe students want to share a couple of images or do them in a series where if people ask questions about the original photo, they can follow up with responses that include more images that expand upon the content area.
Okay, thanks.
Elizabeth, that looks very comfortable. Sit and watch the world go by. Drink your coffee or wine. All right. Somebody had a question?
Yeah, Greg, it's Kenya. I inserted my image and then I wanted to find the equivalent to rotate image. And I found reset, but when I click reset, nothing happens.
So what you need to do is click on it. I'm demonstrating here. I'm on Elizabeth's slide. Sorry, Elizabeth. And right-click on that image. So a two-finger click or right-click, and then choose Rotate. And then you can rotate the slide in any direction. So yeah, that would give Elizabeth a headache. So I'm going to rotate that back. All right, so just a couple more minutes of this, and then we're gonna move on. Oh, nice. That looks very secluded. All right, Ellen, neat.
Greg or Stacie, can they, if we make a slide deck and then can they add slides to that, or do we set the number of slides?
They could add if they have editing access, so they can add slides, which is good. It can also be a danger.
Yeah.
You want them to focus on one. As Stacie mentioned, you could have them put 2 or 3 images on one slide if you want to, but yes, they could add slides then. I mean, it's quite simple. I can simply copy a slide. I can copy any slide and duplicate it.
Okay.
Beautiful view of Mount Hood. Lots of great pictures here. I don't have time to get through all of these. It's we do want to get onto some other things. If you didn't get a chance to comment yet, let's just take a couple more minutes and add any comments that you'd like to. Try to comment on a couple of people's slides if you can. And then we'll move on to the next activity. You know, and you can vary the prompt. So think of different activities that you could use with students. And this prompt is a little bit different from the prompt that we used last week, which was more focused on the actual workspace and pictures of our work, our home office. But this is really nice. We get to see different views of places that are rejuvenating in a sense. Beautiful picture, Van. We're going to move now down to the next slide to reflect on your experience. Yeah, go ahead, Stacie.
Yeah, so part of the experience of sharing images is not just the sharing of the image, but also the ways in which we have conversations. And so while we're not going to actually dive into answering these now, I wanted to throw there just to prompt your thinking before we move into the next part of what we're doing today. So you might consider what you learned from this exercise that you couldn't have learned with words alone. Had we asked you to write a narrative description of your workplace or the view from your workplace, you know, what would you have learned that would have been different than what was captured in the images? How did it feel to share an image? For some folks, depending on the prompt might have felt a little bit personal, and so you might have decided to share a different type of image, or you might have shared an image that you found somewhere that captures the essence of what you wanted to share. So I think it's important for us to hold space with the fact that sharing an image isn't inherently something that people enjoy doing, and especially in the context of the classroom, we should honor and respect that and think about ways to collaborate with students around what sort of parameters for sharing images we put in there. And then think about just overall how this experience has impacted your sense of community and connection with the other people who are in this session today. If you're like me in this remote world, you've been going to a lot more trainings and sessions. And so I know that I feel like I know people out of these sessions and connect with them differently than the ones where I'm not seeing images of people's workspaces or gardens and so forth. So that's sort of a nice framing way to think about the impact of something like sharing an image.
So what we'd like to do for the next 10 minutes is to talk about this in a small group. We're going to send you to a breakout room. You'll have 3 or 4 people in your room and share these ideas. So your name, discipline, ideas about how you could use Photovoice. And we'd like you to add ideas to that Google Doc, and I'm going to just put that in the chat. Everyone go ahead and click on that chat link right now. So just some ideas on how to use Photovoice there. So it'll take you to a Google Doc. You notice that the group on Thursday already put some ideas in there, so you can build on their ideas. They're all sorted by discipline. So look for your discipline, your subject area. If you don't see it, you can add it then. And then when we come back, we'll think about questions that you may have about how to use Photovoice with your students. All right, how did it go? Any questions, comments? Actually, I'd like you to put comments in the chat area.
And while we wait for those to come in, we'll give that a moment. I do want to note that depending on your subject area and how you integrate images, One of the things to consider is starting the quarter with a conversation with your class about some guidelines for images that can be posted, what would be acceptable or not acceptable content. I'm sure you can imagine that there are some potential ethical considerations about including images of other people. And so I think it's great to have that conversation and really give space for students to weigh in on what they're comfortable with. And you might also find through that there's a lot of students who are comfortable taking images of things that they see, sort of their perspective looking out, but they're not necessarily comfortable being the subject of those images at times. So an entry discussion around how we will respect each other and navigate images and content is a great thing to start with, because you'll want to be mindful that there are certainly ways in which this could go awry. And having that conversation up front, I think, is a really good thing to consider. So that's just one note I wanted to put in there. And like we're doing with recording Zoom sessions in our classrooms, if we're teaching in the remote format, to let students know other people in the class would be able to see the whole slide deck, obviously, but also to remind people not to share the information outside of the classroom.
Holly has asked a good question. Thank you, Holly. So are participants supposed to take their own photo, or can they use a photo they found? And I think either way works. I think taking their own photo is ideal because it's their voice. It's more of an empowerment to take your own photo. That's how this activity actually began, as a source of empowerment. And so I believe that would be the case. But yeah, they could use a photo that they found as well. Then certainly something online that fits or may fit the voice or perspective that they have about something. And for example, another ESOL type activity could be share a picture, a photo from a past trip that you've been on. And it could be the student's actual photo from that trip, or it could be something that they found online then. And focusing on past tense, tell us what you did there, why it was special, something like that. So it's nice if it's their own photo, but it doesn't have to be.
Other formats. So this is a great question. There are external tools you can use. I think somebody earlier in the chat mentioned Padlib. There's a lot of other tools that can be used. I don't know that they're necessarily any easier than using Google Slides. And then there's certainly the privacy considerations or any FERPA things as we start to use other external tools. If you have a large class, you could also, depending on the format of your class and how comfortable students are with discussion forums, you also can house all of this in the discussion forum. It's just as simple as students making a post and inserting an image with their post. So there are some ways that might be a little easier for folks to navigate. And that's certainly how I do it in my class, because I'm teaching fully online and I don't have these types of remote meetings. But if I was having a remote meeting where we were all live together, we've had, I think, 31 people when we started the session. And so you might have a couple more folks than that if you have like a 35-person class. So it is possible to navigate all of it in a remote setting, but the discussion forum could also make it a little more palatable for folks to just hone in on a few different posts.
Yeah, so I'll just follow up on that question, Chris. Google Docs, Google Slides, it's maybe one of the simplest tools out there for students to use. There are other more complicated things that you could use. So in a sense, it's a good starting point for this. Now you could do it directly inside of D2L also, as Stacie mentioned and others have mentioned. So just to have them add pictures into a discussion area. So it's not quite as quick to go back and forth between different discussion posts, but certainly possible if you're using it anyway. This is a good activity and a good tool to use for something that's quick, informal. It's not meant to be formal or polished. Now, it could be. You could have students working groups to do something like this, to create a show, some kind of slideshow. And so that's a possibility.
Yeah, and we have a couple more questions in the chat, and we're running low on time. But if you're curious what it looks like in D2L, once we wrap up in a couple of minutes, I'm happy to do a quick screen share of what it looks like as far as a layout in D2L if you're going to use the discussion forum. Linda asked a question like, how do you add this to D2L? Do you post a link to the slides? Yes, you could just, in the content module, insert a link to an external thing the way you would any URL. You also could put the link into the assignment instructions for a discussion forum or on a content page. So there's a lot of ways you could do that, including email.
Also check the handout again. Mm-hmm. So I've added some, I hope they are very clear instructions on how to do that. If you need help, contact one of the ITS as well. Contact me or contact, I'm sure Stacie would be happy to answer questions too, but give me a call or contact one of the ITS. You can meet with any of them. And Andrea Temkin is running an open lab session every Friday afternoon from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So it's a drop-in lab and you can get help there too. Go ahead.
And Barbara asked a question about using short videos instead of photos. And yes, that actually is part of the original Photovoice methodology as well, is that you can include short video. You could do that by having students take a video on their cell phone, or if they were recording themselves speaking, they could use something like Video Note built into D2L. And Holly asked a question about guidelines, like not sharing photos of their children or other things. I kind of have students frame the guidelines a little bit. There might be some people who are really excited to share photos of their children. Maybe they're out on a walk with their family and that's to them their peaceful part of the day and that's what they want to be able to share. So I think one of the things about Photovoice is that it empowers the taker of the image to decide what is in the frame. And so if people want to include their children, then they have the choice there, but it shouldn't be an assignment requirement that they need to. So I think it's good to set up these guidelines with your specific class and to do that every quarter based on who's in that class, because there might be some folks who say, I'd rather not include images of this, or I'd rather not have to see images of this. And again, it would really depend on your content area as well. But I think letting students drive that conversation as a set of community guidelines is one of the better ways to go.
The last slide are the resources. So direct links there to the individual resources, additional resources. Feel free to check those out as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned that I would show a quick. Yeah, so I'm going to do just a quick screen share if that's okay, Greg.
Right, yeah.
So I am just in one of my optional discussion forums, and they can post things that are even not related to the class here. So this is a post that I made, oh gosh, already 16, 17 days ago. Seems like just yesterday. And it was, I shared a couple of images from a trek that I took to Nepal in October. And I've been feeling a little bit claustrophobic being at home a lot and with the weather being not always great. So I shared a couple of images which are partially my perspective from the hike, although my husband did take this photo, so it's not totally my perspective since I'm in it. And then I just included an encouraging word there that was sort of more of my metaphorical way of thinking about being out in the wide open again. And then I always liked in my class all over the place, I have little links to things. And so this link here takes students to a song on YouTube that kind of relates to this topic all around. And so I have just a couple of images that I made or that I inserted here. And that's as simple as, I can just apply to show you. When students go to create a post in D2L, they can enter their text and then they just have to hit this insert image button, and they could do exactly what we did in Google Slides, right? Upload an image that they took. I can use the one from today, and I can add that either as an attachment or, oops, it's not done uploading yet. I can either add it as an attachment or by embedding it directly by adding this file. Now I can do this. Then what it will do is go ahead and show up in the discussion forum quite large, so I can resize it. I can just drag the corner to make it a little bit smaller. But then the students can continue, writing some text, and then, when they're done with their post, hit post, and it will show up looking like the image is embedded here. Another great thing is if you're teaching and like language and descriptive language as a component, you also could have students either in the Google Slides or in D2L write the alternative text for the images and kind of bring accessibility into the picture, and thinking about the ways in which you would use descriptive instead of evaluative language to have alternative text for the images. And then if you had a student with an accommodation for a visual impairment, then that's a way they also could be participating. And they also could just be doing the narrative component or having somebody help them with images. So there's a lot of options with how you can do that, but it's not as dynamic, right, where everybody's working at the same time like in Google Slides, but you certainly can do something similar, whether it's a photo or a video in the discussion forum.
This is neat, and you can do it in a formal way as a formal class assignment, or you can do it informally as Stacie has done here in putting it into a topic area called the coffee shop. So just having students share something then with a picture.